Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tammy from the MSISAC. Thank you so much for joining today's national webcast, A Working Cloud, Tackling the Security Risks. Just a few housekeeping items. If you would like to view your screens in full screen mode, there is a double arrow icon at the top of the slides. Click that, and that will enable you to have a full screen mode. In order to ask a question, if you go up to the top of the screen and use the question mark icon, click that. This will open up the Q&A window in your system. Type your questions in the small dialog box and click Send to all panelists, and we will do our best to get all of your questions answered. It is my pleasure to introduce to you all Elayne Starkey. Elayne Starkey is the Chief Security Officer in Delaware's Department of Technology and Information, responsible for Delaware's enterprise cybersecurity, disaster recovery, and continuity of operation programs. Elayne is the chair of the Delaware Information Security Officer team and member of the Governor's Homeland Security Council. She is a certified information system security professional and a Computer Week's Federal 100 winner. She was honored as one of 10 most influential people in government information security, a distinguished alumni award from James Madison University, and has testified before the U.S. Senate on cybersecurity. Elayne holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Computer Science, Math, and Business Administration from James Madison University, and a Master's degree in Computer Science from Rochester Institute of Technology, with concentrations in software, engineering, and data communications. Elayne is a lifelong volunteer mentor and is passionate about encouraging young women to pursue careers in science, technology, and math. So without further ado, Elayne.
Thank you, Tammy. Can you hear me okay?
We sure can.
Hello, everyone. Very, very glad to be part of this today. Tammy, thank you for the invitation to talk about the cloud. We talk about the cloud on a regular basis in Delaware. So this is a natural extension of those conversations. Very excited to see so many people joined. I know we had a very high number of registrations, and we're over 400 people that are on the call today. So that's the first thing that I want to do, right? Public Speaking 101 is to know your audience, and that's the first polling question that we're going to post up first. Is I'd like you to give us an idea through the polling feature on what best describes where you work, anything from different kinds of levels of government, tribal, higher education, law enforcement, military, or other. And we'll let the poll run for a little bit until we get your results. Don't be shy. We'll keep it open for about 10 more seconds. Okay, very good. And the second polling question, let's talk about where you are relative to cloud adoption. And I have a couple of different options here, everything ranging from no way am I ever going to send anything to the cloud to moving things to the cloud as fast as possible because it's more secure, and a couple options there in between. And we also have a couple miscellaneous options there. My good friend Alan Pauler always encourages me whenever you take a poll, always have the one that says, no way am I going to vote in person, never going to raise my hand no matter what you say. So not quite as intimidating to do that when we're online. So we'll leave that poll up for a couple more seconds. And Tammy, I'm not seeing the results here, so once we close this poll, if you could chime in with the results of the poll, that would be helpful.
Hi, Elaine. Thanks. Yep, I'm just waiting for those results to come in, and as soon as I have them, I will get them over to you.
Okay, very good. Tammy, I think I'll move on to the next slide, and then we'll circle back and pull those results back in, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to work on it on this end. It might just be because of the volume of the answers, so
okay, that's
I'll get them
problem.
to you. Thanks.
Thank you. So no matter what part of government or even the private sector, wherever you may be calling in from today, there's no doubt about it. Our networks need protection. These are just some of Delaware's numbers, and Delaware is a small state, as you see here, but certainly lots of reasons, lots of risk points, and lots of reasons to be concerned with lots of computer, laptop endpoints out there, lots of interest and lots of applications moving to the cloud here in Delaware. The mobile devices, unique applications, 5.5 million inbound emails a day. Much of that is either spam or containing viruses that get stripped out. So, just a really healthy exchange of information day in and day out, going from our state servers and state computers to the internet to the tune of 2 gigs of data per second. And, the more concerning number, I know many of you have similar numbers, if not larger, 500,000 network probes per day out there, just looking for those unlocked doors. So this slide just kind of sets the stage for why we're even talking about this and why we're concerned. So before we get to the next slide, let me go back to Tammy for the polling results.
Okay, Elaine, I do have those results. Do you want me to just go ahead and read them?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we have 8 of our attendees as federal government, 74 as state, 49 local, 1 tribal, 28 higher education, 2 law enforcement. I have 1 military, and then we had 131 as other.
Okay, great. Thank you. And as far as cloud adoption, the cloud adoption poll?
Okay, so for the adoption poll, we have 13 were no way, 46 was we are moving to the cloud but feel out of control, 168 we are moving to the cloud in a deliberate, controlled way, 10, I am moving solutions to the cloud as fast as possible. 11, I'm not voting no matter what you say. And 51, other.
Okay. Well, maybe we can get into what the other adoption level is in the Q&A. I'd be interested in hearing more about that. So let me take, I just want to take some time to step you through what the Delaware journey has been like, and it truly has been a journey to the cloud, a journey to ensure that we can leverage all of the benefits of the cloud, and there are so many. We are huge fans of the cloud, but there's no doubt about it. When you move to the cloud, it introduces risks that you don't have otherwise. So I wanted to, just first of all, I think perhaps many, if not all of you, have similar types of data that needs protection that you see on this slide. I always contend that those of us in government, our bar is somewhat higher in many cases than even private sector organizations, just because we're a government. And government collects information about people primarily. It's just what we do. It's just one of our core services and core businesses. So our databases, as I'm sure are yours, are filled with PII and PHI and FTI and intellectual property and criminal justice data and a lot of other types of data too that all needs protection, whether that data resides on premise, on servers in your data centers, or off-prem in the cloud or through some type of off-site hosting arrangement. For many of us, this is our core responsibility. As I know that I could speak for my team, this is what we do day in and day out, is we look for ways to increase our protection levels for exactly this type of data. So there's a couple different angles, a couple different approaches that could be taken when it comes to cloud. What we did in Delaware, this goes back, now we're in our 6th year, believe it or not. Back in 2011, we unveiled what was called a cloud-first policy. And that was not original thinking on Delaware's part, and I want to give my colleagues from the federal government, I want to give you the credit on that, because I believe it was the CTO for the federal government at the time, Vivek Kundra, that coined that phrase. And what it meant in Delaware is that it doesn't necessarily mean that everything goes to the cloud, but what it does mean is that the cloud is considered for every single new application. And many times the answer to that analysis is yes, it is suitable to the cloud, but there are occasions where the answer is no, that type of data might be highly sensitive, or the vendor might not be as mature as we want, and decisions are made at that point whether or not to go to the cloud. But as I said earlier, there's no doubt about it, the cloud definitely reduces our control. It introduces risks that must be managed. And it's no longer, it's not acceptable to just say, well, let's just sit back and just hope the vendor does the right thing. That's kind of the easy way to think about it, but definitely not a recommended approach at all. And for us, it was not just cloud. I mean, there's lots of definitions of cloud, and that's something important to get grounded on first. For those of you that were in the no way category on the poll, it's just really important to identify what the cloud means. And in our case, we expanded it from pure traditional cloud to any type of hosted or outsourced type of solution. At any time, I mean, to keep it simple, it's any time the data leaves the edge of our network. That's when a lot of the controls that I'm going to speak about today kind of kick in. And that means audit. That means might be HR, human resources, data analysis projects. I have all kinds of examples of where it might be just a short-term engagement where our data gets delivered to a vendor for analysis, the results come back, and some of the same controls around data scrubbing and data retention and things like that kind of kick in. So I'll speak about this kind of holistically. The majority of this is about pure traditional cloud, either SaaS or infrastructure as a service solutions or platform as a service, but it also has grown over the years to include some of these other engagements. So the journey, back to the journey, it truly has been the journey to the sweet spot. And what I mean by that is we imposed, we developed, we created some terms and conditions back in 2011. And I am the first one to admit that we overcorrected because we went from no controls when data left the edge of our network to, I believe it was, we were up to 26 terms that were included in those early contracts in 2011. And gosh, we thought we were doing the right thing. and I do believe we certainly had the right spirit and the right intent, but it was so onerous and really very difficult to work with our vendors to get to mutual agreement on what those conditions should be. Over the course of the last 6 years, we have vetted over 250 solutions through this process, but we have updated the terms 3 different times. And each time we did it, we streamlined, we simplified, we combined, we dropped some of the early terms that we thought were important turned out to be not so important. We discovered that it's not really in our best interest to be totally prescriptive with our cloud vendors by telling them exactly what to do and how to do it. That doesn't really help anyone, but certainly we need to give them the latitude within some type of framework on how they're going to protect our data and make sure that it aligns with what the final outcome is without necessarily telling them exactly how to do it. So we're on our 3rd version. We're actually working on our 4th version right now. In the middle of all that, along came the Center for Digital Government Cloud Procurement Study. That was back in 2015, 2 years ago now. And we were happy to be invited to be part of that. That was a really fascinating study. Center for Digital Government did a fabulous job pulling together all of the right stakeholders, from the largest cloud vendors to lots of different levels of government. And they produced a procurement and best practices guide that, if you have not seen it, I highly recommend that you take a look at it. I think there's a screenshot of it coming up. It's still on the CDG site. And we were honored in Delaware for that they took the terms and conditions that we had published and used that as the starting point for that CDG study and the eventual final report. And then so like I said, we've done about 250 or more pure SaaS solutions. But in the last 2 years, we've gotten much more into infrastructure and platform as a service vetting of those same terms and conditions. And as I mentioned earlier, we are working on a new version of the T's and C's, which I'll speak about on a future slide. So let me give you an idea. When I refer to terms and conditions, what am I talking about? This is just a snapshot of I think we're down to, for non-public data, we have 13 terms and conditions. For public data, we have 10. I'm going to show you the link to our website where you can find them. But in its simplest form, here are some of the basic terms that we require in every single engagement. And I personally have been involved and participate in many of the cloud vettings, and more recently, especially the ones with high-value data. Anytime there's a full Social Security number, anytime there's a full date of birth or credit or account information, I personally get involved with the negotiations with the vendor. And I have to say, this is probably a good time to say what a change I've seen over the last 6 years when it comes to these discussions with vendors. In the early days, number one, we had more strict controls. We had 26 of them to work through, and keep in mind that it was early in the days of cloud. The whole cloud model was brand new, and there were many new vendors, vendors that were new at this game, and security wasn't necessarily top of mind for them. I think we've matured incredibly. This whole space, this whole cloud offering space has matured in such a dramatic way, and security is top of mind for many of them. And so these conversations that used to be, number one, long, and number two, a lot of back and forth, have really leveled out. And I think we've gotten more reasonable on what we're asking for, and our vendors are coming in with many of these things covered right from the beginning. So we've kind of matured into a very manageable process at this point. Number one term, probably the most important term for me, is that the state retains data ownership. We are partnering with a vendor to house that data off of the state network, but that doesn't mean we're giving it to them to own. We keep ownership of that. We look at them as a custodian or a steward of our data, and the terms and conditions kind of define what that relationship is going to look like. It's important for me that we talk about all of these terms ahead of time, so we go in with eyes wide open in terms of what the expectations are and what I'm responsible for and what they're responsible for. The data physically has to stay in the United States, and that includes backups. That also includes DR locations as well. In the event of a breach, the vendor it is our expectation that the vendor will be liable for all response and recovery costs. And we spell out specifically what we mean by that. What we mean is 3 years of credit monitoring. Our expectation is a call center would be stood up, the communication to those that are impacted. In many cases, a website that impacted residents can go to find out information about the breach and how they can respond and recover. Think about that, where we were 7 years ago. That was not at all commonplace. It is today for just about any type of breach, but it wasn't then, and that created some lively conversations with our vendors. So this is a really important one to us. It's like I said earlier, we are entrusting our data to them, and in return, if there's a weakness in their system, or if they don't take that responsibility serious enough and there's some type of incident or a breach, it's our expectation that they will pay for all of the costs for the breach response and the breach recovery. And then upon contract termination, this is what we have. We have some nicknames for all of these terms. This is called our prenuptial agreement, right? If things go wrong, either we just decide to seek our services elsewhere, or if there's a problem with the contract or whatever, and the contract is terminated for whatever reason, we're expecting an orderly return of that data, and then on top of that, a secure disposal. And we spell out all those terms in advance. In many cases, the time frame for that depends on the type of data. In some cases, there's regulatory requirements to retain the data for a certain period of time. But when there's not, I want that data scrubbed just as soon as possible from those servers, as soon as possible and as soon as practical. Because as soon as I can get that securely disposed using NIST standards, then that reduces the risk for me as a state. I also want to know about all of their strategic business partners going into the engagement. Are they going to take our data and turn around and send it to another subcontractor. This one is nicknamed the target clause because of the nature of what happened with the target breach a couple years ago, right? I want to know who the strategic business partners are related to the delivery of their service. I don't need to know all of the nitty-gritty, like who they buy their paper from and details like that. But when it comes to the data, the sharing of the data, the delivery of the service to us, I want to go into the engagement being fully aware of who their business partners are and who else might get our data, and we assign our prime contractor with the responsibility of cascading all of these data protection clauses to their subcontractors. In most cases, we need criminal background checks for any staff and subcontractors that will have access to the data. We also want that data to be encrypted, both in transit to the cloud, and if it's PII data, if it's any data that would be subject to our state law, our state breach notification law, our first preference is that it is encrypted at rest. And this is another area where there's been just very positive progress. In just a few years ago, it was unusual to talk to a vendor who offered that out of the box, the encryption at rest. And as that has become a safe harbor for many state breach notification laws, that we're seeing that that's becoming more and more commonplace. We do have a bit of a safety net on that one, and because this one in particular has been one that our vendor partners have not always been able to comply with, we do have an option. If they're unable to encrypt at rest, first of all, they give us a time frame when they can get there, but as a safety net, then they can provide evidence of their cybersecurity insurance policy as an alternative to this particular term. So that is not all of the terms, but that's certainly some of the most major terms. I mentioned the CDG study earlier. This is a screenshot of where you can find that paper. Not only there's information about the study itself, and there's also the final set of recommended terms and conditions for both SaaS, for all three, SaaS, infrastructure, and platform as a service. And this is the other slide that I just referenced too. This is where you can find, if you're interested in taking a look at the Delaware terms and conditions, it's really a three-part document. First of all, the policy itself is out there along with all of our other enterprise standards and policies. And then within that, I mentioned there's public set of 13 non-public T's and C's and 10 public T's and C's. And dti.delaware.gov is where you can find that. So where do we go from here? I think I've mentioned a couple times that we are on our 4th version. We are actively working on that, and what I see at this point is a new litmus test emerging. We've got a number of certifications, organization certifications that simply were not there a couple years ago or weren't as mature as they are today, whether it's FedRAMP or FIPS or some of the ISO standards. We've got HIPAA, we've got high-tech, and we've got a cloud security assessment that is now just, I understand from my good friend in Arizona, Mike Letman, is now NIST compliant. So those are all really important certifications that many of our vendors are coming in, and right out of the gate, they are claiming and attesting and providing evidence that they are compliant with these certifications. So that's changing the game a little bit for us. And we haven't quite nailed down exactly what that litmus test is going to look like, but it is going to be some combination of the certifications here. So let me just try to summarize here. I mean, the bottom line for us in Delaware and our recommendation to those of you that might not have jumped in the water yet is, first of all, take a risk-based approach. This is a risk discussion. It's not so much a technology discussion. It's about risk and transferring risk and risk avoidance. Don't be shy about jumping in the driver's seat and taking an assertive stance on this, holding the vendors accountable. Buyer beware is always good advice. And just make sure security is one of the first conversations you have with vendors where you're considering on sending your data to them for them to be in custody of. And it's our belief that this is doable. This is very doable. We feel like we're well on our journey to the cloud. And in my position from our polling question earlier, you know, I feel like we're moving to the cloud in a very deliberate and somewhat controlled way. And it requires, you know, a lot of care and feeding, but I feel like we were able to get out in front of it and get the right contractual clauses out there, mix it in with assertive contract negotiation, and what we've been able to do is mitigate a lot of risk and at the same time maximize the benefits of cloud computing and off-site hosting and keep our the folks who handle the money, keep them happy at the same time, because there are many, many benefits of cloud computing, not just the financial bottom line, but in terms of agility and speed to market and all of that. There's some really wonderful benefits to moving to the cloud, but it's my position that it just needs to be combined with a lot of attention on the security side. So this is the synopsis of our journey. This is one of my final slides, I believe. And at some point in time over the last 6-7 years, these words have come out of my mouth. You know, it started with, you want us to send the data where? and you know, on top of that, no way. No way. I cannot let our data go to the cloud. I mean, those words came out of my mouth back in 2011. And then it kind of changed from, well, yeah, maybe we can use the cloud, but only if the vendor agrees to our cloud terms and conditions. And now, you know, as I just mentioned, we're moving. Now the more typical response from me is we are moving to the cloud in a deliberate, controlled way. And believe it or not, there are times when I've thought about the last one as well. I haven't quite articulated it quite so as it is here, but there are many people that I believe, you know, and many situations that, you know, if we delay moving to the cloud any longer, we're actually going to be less secure than those that do so. So I just find that such an interesting contrast from the first bullet. You know, in 6 years to get from no way to thinking that, wow, the cloud, in some cases, with the right controls, the cloud can be more secure than an on-premise solution. So here's a graphic of our reputation slide. We use this a lot when we're talking to state employees and others. You know, the hackers have to be right just once, and we have to be right all of the time. Whether it's cloud or all of our other defenses, it's a reputation that, you know, could take decades to build up. It can be threatened by a single event or one pop of the balloon. So I think that's the last slide. There's my contact information, and I hope that there's some questions. I think we've got some time to field some questions, Tammy. Not sure exactly how that's going to work, so I'll just turn the virtual mic back to you for guidance.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Yes, we do have quite a few questions pouring in, so we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. So I know that in the beginning, after we gave the polling results, you had wanted to know what your other was. One person responded back that only one service, Microsoft Office 365G, is moving to the cloud. So I didn't know if that was something that you had wanted to know about. And then we do have another question. Okay. All right. So having reviewed 2 ISIS hacked cloud sites, he was stating that he thinks that we needed a strategic security specifications. Did you agree with that?
Could you repeat that for me, Tammy?
I'm sorry. Having reviewed 2 ISIS hacked cloud sites, do you think we need stringent security specifications?
I do support stringent security specifications, very much so. As I said earlier, I think it's important to jump in the driver's seat and take a real assertive stance. I'm the first to admit that we jumped in the driver's seat and we just went full bear, and we ended up with 26. That was a little bit overkill, but part of our journey, part of the reason to walk you through the journey here is to let you know I feel like we found that middle ground, or the sweet spot. We've come back to the 13 that I feel are most important. They are fairly strict, but yet very achievable, very manageable, at least in our experience, for the cloud vendors to meet that, so that it doesn't cause too much business interruption.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Next question was, do you often have to turn away from a vendor for lack of being able to encrypt a PII at rest?
Excellent question. Yeah, I'm really proud to say that with these 250-plus vettings that we've done, only in just a couple cases have we been unable to come to terms with a vendor. And, you know, I credit our enterprise architecture team and lots of participants in that process to be creative and to find a way to meet the security controls given the vendor's situation. You know, there were a few in the beginning that just, you know, didn't pass the muster, just were not mature enough as an organization, and we weren't able to reach agreement on them. But as I mentioned, the question, the very specific question here is about the encryption at rest. Of all of the terms, that between that one and the accepting full liability for a breach, those are the 2 that create the most conversation. And in many cases, in the early days, we had vendors that just simply could not meet the encryption at rest. They might have had a project on the books to get there, but for the contract timing, they did not have it. And that is the exact reason why we added in the cyber insurance liability. And we have a schedule that lays out the number of records that would be included in the engagement over the life of the engagement, and that would drive the coverage limit for the cyber insurance policy. So I feel like we're in a good place at this point. If they, as I said earlier, more and more are coming in with the ability to encrypt at rest, so that's a good thing. But when they are not, and when we still feel like we want to partner with that vendor, then they have to provide their evidence, their certificate of insurance for their cyber liability insurance to demonstrate that they're covered up to the limits that we require given the size of the engagement.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question is, has anyone used containers in the cloud?
Has anyone used containers in the cloud? I'd love to get more information on what, I mean, there's a couple things that I'm thinking about. Not sure if that's really where that question is headed or not. Containers, we use containers like with our BYOD program. I'm not sure if that's where that question is headed, or I don't know. I don't know, Tammy. If there's an opportunity to get more detail, I'd love to get that.
Okay, I'll see if maybe the person who asked it is still on, and if he responded to more details. So we'll keep an eye out for that, but we can move on to the next question to see if he responds in.
Okay.
So the next question I have is, will the are you requiring insurance if thereby the vendor goes under? I think that was part of, looks like slide 8, the third bulletin, and I will pull that slide up for you.
And the question was about insurance.
Yeah.
In the event that the vendor goes out of business?
Yes.
No, not directly, not exactly in that way. Our insurance requirement kicks in when they are unable to encrypt PII at rest. That's when we require the certificate of insurance. Now, certainly there's some data, orderly return of the data that is required. So they sign up for that, you know, whether they stay in business or not. And we have the protections in place and the legal cover, hopefully, that if they were to go out of business, at least in a controlled way, that we would be able to get our data back and move on to another vendor. Doesn't always happen that way. Doesn't happen that neat and nice all the time. But that's, you know, then we'd be probably in some type of legal battle, and we feel like the T's and C's would give us the necessary cover in a situation that's not quite so organized or friendly.
All right, next question is, how do you confirm the data has been scrubbed at contract termination? Example, letter, right to audit possibly?
Yeah, great question. We do require a certificate of destruction for that data, and I can provide a link to that, where that certificate of destruction is. In our case, we rely on NIST, the NIST standards for data destruction. And what was the second part of that question, Tammy?
They had just said, example, a letter or a right to, I'm sorry, I just lost my place. All right, hold on. The questions are coming in fast and furious.
Okay. That's a good problem. Oh,
yeah,
it was
exactly.
about audit, I think. One of the terms is also the ability to audit the contract.
Yes,
so,
that's what it was. Thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, the answer to both of those is yes. The certificate of destruction in the first half of the question. And in our case, it's term number 11, which is the clause that allows us to audit conformance to all of the contract terms, not just the data destruction clause.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much. I think this is switching gears as to once you're moved to the cloud, what actions do you take to ensure the cloud vendors are complying with all of your terms?
Excellent question as well. Yeah, at this point in our process, I feel like we've done a super job in getting these controls in place at the time of contract execution. I do not have a compliance plan. I'm not staffed in a way or funded in a way to go back and audit all of the contracts for compliance. But what I do have is I have a budget request in to move in that direction. With 250 of them out there, it's unlikely that I will get funded or staffed in a way to do that for all of them. But what we can do is take the contracts with the most high value data. In our case, we consider socials, dates of birth. Those are the two things, the only two things an identity thief needs to steal your identity. We consider that type of data as crown jewel data. So as a way to get started, I'd like to be able to come behind it and audit for compliance for, at a minimum, those engagements that involve our crown jewel data.
All right, excellent, thank you. This one's a little bit long, so I'm going to try to shorten it just a little bit. Regarding the idea that the cloud may be more secure than on-premises systems, assuming the cloud vendor is 100% effective, isn't the weak spot continued to be on-premise network and systems? In what way do you feel you are more secure?
Yeah, interesting question. Yes, I think as presented, if we are talking about a world, and I think we're moving closer to it all the time, where it is going to just be more secure in the cloud, especially for those of us in government who don't have necessarily the real robust budget to lock things down in a way that some of the Tier 1 providers can do. So I think so. I think your point is well taken. It is, the weak spot as we move forward may indeed be the systems that are left behind and the systems that stay on-premise. Maybe an exception to that would be, some of the legacy mainframe systems that aren't necessarily as vulnerable to the security risks. They would, in some cases, they may stay behind on-prem. But yes, without a doubt, I think as we move forward, I think we're at a point where the pendulum is going to start swinging the other way. And when we as an organization look at where our greatest risks are, it's somewhat ironic. It feels ironic, but it may indeed, the answer to that question for many of us may be the systems that have not moved to the cloud.
All right, thank you again. So I have one more question that's come in. Do you have a template for the terms and conditions for using or for selecting a cloud vendor?
Say that again, please, Tammy. A template for?
For the terms and conditions when selecting a vendor for the cloud.
I think what they're asking for is the T's and C's. If it's the Delaware T's and C's themselves, the 13 that I've spoken about today. If we go back to slide 10, this is the location. It's at dti.delaware.gov. These are the actual terms and conditions in PDF format that you could then take and adapt for your own usage. I would consider that the template.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I didn't see any further information come in from that one question that we were waiting for. And a lot of the questions that have come in are duplicates of what you've already answered, so everyone is on the same mind thought. So unless anyone has any further questions, I think that we're wrapped up. I would just encourage anyone to, if you didn't have a question answered in the way that you were hoping to, please reach out to Elaine, or you can email the MSISAC info mailbox, and we will get that over to Elaine. So thank you, everyone, for joining today. Elaine, thank you. Great presentation, a lot of information, and we really appreciate you taking the time to be on our national webcast. So everyone have a great weekend. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tammy.